Welcome to Pussy Power. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Pussy Power. As you probably already know, if I have this smile on my face, it means we have a special guest, which I'm so excited to always talk to awesome people. Today we have Dave Ngo, who is a first generation Chinese-Vietnamese immigrant and entrepreneur. His first career was actually in tech, but he soon realized it wasn't for him. And after his younger sister passed after a really sad suicide letter, he has decided to take his path in his own hands and start his own business ventures. And he has now a bartending company that does Fortune 500 events like Google and Facebook, and they do weddings as well. And he's also venturing into real estate to create his life by design and live a life with freedom and success on his own terms. Dave, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, what's up? What's going on here?
I love it. For the very first thing that kind of hooked my attention when you and I were both talking was you had this concept of a life by design where you're not just allowing yourself to be like to fit in this one mold that other people have for you, like us Asian kids. What was it that drove you to kind of what was the tipping point that drove you to take your path back into your own hands and take accountability for the decisions that you were making in your life?
I think the first thing is I was just being very stubborn. But growing up, I had a very strict upbringing. My parents were all about academia. So they're immigrant parents here, and they want us to focus on academics, and it was so intense that I literally do not have a childhood. And what I mean by that is, so let's say school's what, Monday through Friday, and then
Mm.
Saturday is like I guess I have Chinese school, and then Sunday I had Boy Scouts and Vietnamese school. So there's no break in education. But I understand from my parents' point of view, they would really want to push you to that, try and make you excel, but they gotta understand that we're kids and we're human beings,
Mm.
and we don't need that much push. We just need some of that break at times.
Yeah.
Um, so it was very stressful with academics, but eventually went to a very good college. And then after, when I was done with college, I just felt that I was being put pressure too much, being pushed too much.
So
I was
there's not
being
much play in your
there.
childhood.
There wasn't, and
Wow.
yeah, yeah, there wasn't. It was a yeah. I can't think of any time until after college. That's when I start partying,
Yeah, pretty
and
late to the scene a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I just feel like even after college, doing and finding a high tech job, I wasn't appeasing my parents, and that's when I just finally just like, hey, you know what? I don't think this is gonna work. So I just started, in a way, it's called rebelling against my family,
Mm.
and that started turning the wheel. So that's where I was at.
Wow. So you, from what you just said there, it sounded to me like all your life you were playing the role that they've always wanted you to play, but somehow it's just never enough.
Right, right. And I felt like I would always have to appease them, even till this time. I always feel like I have to please my parents all the time. And you know what? This life is ours. We have only one life to live,
Mm.
and we got to make most of it. And that's a turning point for me. And I was being brutally honest. I think that's the thing. I was being very brutally honest to myself and to my family. And although it's the honest truth, it doesn't make them feel happy. But at the end, I think they start to see that now, and how I can be success in different ways.
Mm. What was the path that they wanted you to take? Because you mentioned they were, immigrant parents who probably didn't have, the privileges that they gave you, and that's why they were super duper anal about it. Like they
Right.
just wanted you to be successful.
Right. You know what? It's crazy because I I I was going into this trying going as a pre-med major, and that was my path. But then for
Yeah.
some reason after college it just didn't feel right. I just didn't feel my energy and my vibe. It just didn't connect with that. And I tried. You don't know how hard I
Mm.
tried. I'm like, you know what? But then I just didn't mold in that sense. So that was my biggest struggle right there. And
That's
and and I'm like, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
that's interesting because my boyfriend's also like a med school dropout, and the moment he dropped out, like his family support just stopped, like just completely stopped. And just
Right.
imagine, as a student, you were conditioned to kind of like just keep studying, and then one day you're like, this is not for me. I'm sorry, dad. Like it's this is not working out. And literally he had like his last 200 bucks, and that was what just powered him through.
Wow. What does he do now?
He's an entrepreneur just like you, just like us. And he's just like, fuck this like med school life, because he realized that, and I'm not sure if it's the same in the Philippines and in the US, probably a little different. But here you actually need to study 4 years of pre-med before you could be a doctor, which
Mhm,
is another 4 years of studying, and then you go through like years of internships and then residency. So it's
mhm.
gonna take like literally 12 years before you can start making serious money. And everything
Right.
before that is a loss. And he was like, uh, this doesn't make sense.
Right. It's not crazy. When you do this, you really feel in your heart like if this is your path, you should totally commit to it. But if you don't, it's you should probably do something else. I think
Yeah.
now I live in this life where I try to strive for freedom. I think that's like
Mm,
my biggest thing, especially as an entrepreneur. So now I feel like that's more my mold and my fit right now.
that's beautiful. How was it? How was it like being in your first career in tech,
Mhm.
and kind of like the moments that made you realize this was a different path than the one you wanted to be on?
You know what? It's so natural for me to go into high tech because I live in Silicon Valley, so
Mm.
it's literally everywhere, and the opportunity is just right there. So I had a friend referred me to a position in high tech, and then I stayed in there, and then I sort of went up the ladder. But for some reason, going to high tech, it just didn't vibe with me. I just didn't feel connected, and it's so funny because I was working late night in high tech, so it was a pretty decent paying job. And then my mom was like, "Why are you working late at night?" That's like another complaint I have. I'm like, dude, I forgot. Now I'm getting another complaint. That's another reason why I'm like, you know what?
Mm.
Let's. I'm never gonna make them happy. So why don't I just
Mm.
start making myself happy too?
Mm. What was the standards that she kind of like had? Why was that like a complaint that you got from her? Did she just want you to like clock in at 9 and then like clock out by 5 and then it's family time or whatever?
You know what? That's a very good question. I think it has to deal with their mindset, and
Mm.
their mindset. Her mindset is always complaining. Got complain, and that's
Mm.
in her mind. I think by complaining is how I would push my kid, and that's
Oh,
such a negative reinforcement there. But I think
yeah.
that's bad parenting in that sense. I don't think that now I'm a lot older and I'm more aware. I'm never going to do that to my kids. Like always encourage them or try to find another way for to make them excel on this world, not by complaining. And I guess she does that all the time. I think that's her way of parenting in some sense.
Mm. Do you have any idea of kind of like the background that they had with their parents? Or because you guys were like first generation immigrants, you didn't really have, you kind of like lost touch with the extended family.
Right. That's a very good question. So, yeah, immigrant parents, totally different from a different world, from a different generation. And then for us being here, we're grown up in a different culture, different generation. It's just totally different. And when you talk about extended
Mm.
family, we had to. They're all great. They're all great in the extended family. They just within our family, this they just try to mold us into this thing. And the other thing,
Mm.
what they're trying to do is they try to boost up their image. I don't know if it happens in the Filipino culture, but in the Chinese-Vietnamese culture, it's all about their image, about their
Yeah.
is that in as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
about your honor, bring honor to your family. So
Yeah.
my parents were trying to put their facade saying that, hey, we're very smart and all these good things and we can make good money. So I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, that's killing me there.
That's totally like I can totally relate to that. Like I did something like 2 years ago that my dad literally just cut me off and told me to stop using the family name and like remove it from Facebook. And I'm like, got my birth certificate. What's wrong with you?
Interesting. Do you guys have a
Yeah.
distinctive last name?
Um, in my opinion, no, but to them it's like a really big deal.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? That's so interesting that he brought that up. So did you still like use that last name or you just kind of changed it on your own?
Yeah, I was like, you know what? It's on my birth certificate. You can like get mad all you want, but I mean, this is my name. The fuck? It's like it's not like I'm like Kendall Jenner and Beelish like
Right.
Kendall. I'm Kendall. It's like sorry, Dad doesn't work that way. But it's so like totally saw that and like whenever in their perception you make a mistake or you do something that kind of like dishonors their last name, it's kind of like they want to stop being associated with you. I think it's because of their relationship with shame and anger and all like the emotions on the negative, like the lower frequency emotions. And it's really interesting how like one thing could spoil your relationship with like the entire clan.
Right, right. And it's so funny because in hindsight, if you're on the other side, you'd be like, most people don't give a fuck. Maybe they kind of
Yeah,
do, but they're just like, okay, whatever. I mean, that's what they do.
yeah,
Isn't that funny? Like we always think so much in our own head
yeah,
and
yeah.
can affect us. Yeah,
There's
that's so bad.
definitely so much ego there. Did you mentioned to me before that your parents didn't have like the same education that you guys got. Do you think that was like a factor in why they wanted to, puff up their ego even more because they didn't really have what you had?
Yeah, I think that's a major factor. I mean, yeah, my parents didn't get the opportunity, and then they came from the Vietnam War, so totally understand that
Mm,
they didn't get that much of the education. But when they got over here, they actually had opportunities. Actually, they came over here roughly in their late 20s, so they're still pretty young at that time. But I guess just their mindset. I think it's yeah, their education, but I also think it's mainly their mindset. If they were more of a growth thinking mindset and how they can implement in this new world that they're in, that would be great. But by me just saying this, it's like so easy than doing because it is a culture shock. I mean, my dad
yeah.
told me when he came over to the U.S., he came with a small luggage with only $100 bill. I mean, that's
Wow.
crazy. That's crazy. So, um, I,
Wow.
I mean, I already give them a big award for them for being
Yeah.
parents and trying to raise us to be pretty good human beings here.
And coming from the Vietnam War, like survival is like such a win for them already. That's like that they're alive. They're not buried 6 feet under, and they're there to facilitate you guys growing up.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. It's so funny because they got picked up by a Japanese boat, which is extremely rare. You never heard of anybody getting picked up by a Japanese boat during the Vietnam War. So, and then they came over here. So, yeah, you're right. You came up with a good term. It's survival. And the thing is, they always have that survival mindset, and I
Hmm.
think that's been their theme of their life
Hmm.
through their entire life as we live here in this world.
Wow. It's kind of like the war is over, but they brought and they escaped from the war physically,
Yeah,
but the psychology that they got from, being in Vietnam during the war, they still kind of took with them to the US, even though there's like it's so full of opportunity.
yeah, and it is. So if I don't know what happens in the Philippines, but in the U.S., a lot of Asian people they have this hoarding issues. They
Oh
hoard.
yeah.
Okay, that happens there.
Yeah.
they hoard so much, and I think that's because they have a scarcity mindset, and they try to survive. They're like, oh my god, one day I'm gonna lose all the stuff I have. But
Yeah.
we live in a capitalist society. We can easily hoard a lot of things in a matter of like a click.
Oh my God, it's so funny you say that because I have this friend who's like an entrepreneur, doing really well for himself, but then his parents, like his dad, is hilarious because literally, disposable paper plates, right? He would literally collect every single paper plate that he'd get like at a party and say, "Oh, you should never throw these." And literally, they have like a collection of paper plates and disposable spoon and fork at their home. So funny.
I I think all stems from their childhood. I mean, is that
Mm.
crazy? So like, I mean, we're getting older, and then we may become parents in the future. What things do you think that you're gonna have certain habits that your kids are gonna make fun of you?
Oh my God. That's a really good question. Like, it's so funny because I I know that I'm gonna live and I'm gonna give a much better life to my kids than, the one that I've grown up with because I came from a broken family and, my mom was kind of like the only parent that we had until my dad kind of like picked up slack again when he built himself. Um, and being like having gone through that already, I think one of the biggest things that I would still want to have, to pass to my kids is adversity quotient. Because people who've gone through like a lot of adversity, they just have a better chance of like making it in life, of, not being entitled, of knowing, what things are worth and not to keep wasting stuff. And this particular thing that I told like my ex and now my current boyfriend, I'm like, when we have kids, I'm just gonna give them $1 a day. $1 a day.
That's that's very good. That's very good. And you're talking about dollar day as teenagers, or when they come to adults, or moving
I think
on
as
and on.
as a kid, because it's not,
Mhm.
because like you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur,
Sure.
and it's not like we can force our kids, to be entrepreneurs like ourselves,
Hmm.
but it's so important, in my opinion, for them to at least be entrepreneurial. That at least even if that's not the path they take, they know that, if they can't pay for rent next month, then they have this kind of like backup plan that they can resort to, like sell stuff and like, because if you give someone $1 a day, it's like, mommy, like I want like a Pokemon card or something. I'm like, yep, you gotta make that happen. How do you make that happen with $1 a day? They learn things. And that's totally what happened to me. Like I used to like have so much resentment for my dad because he would give like all these people like really nice gifts, like really expensive wine. And now as an entrepreneur, I understand it's because he was building connection, right? With his associates to get
Hmm.
more business. But as a kid, I never really truly like understood that. And so I had so much resentment because I'm like, why am I given $2? Like as an allowance and they're getting expensive wine. I don't get it. How about you? How about you? What's yours?
Yeah, no, I think that dollar that's such a simple task, but it's so much impactful in people's lives. I think for me is probably something similar with that. I my personal philosophy is I don't want to work for money. I want money to work for
Mm.
me. I think that's been my biggest thing right there. And as an entrepreneur, I think that's with all of us. So I think with people who are listening, I think that most of us are employees, which is great.
Mm.
And the thing is, what entrepreneurs do is they try to make or build something that they can create more jobs for other people, and also to aspire other people, and lead other people as well. So I think it comes with a lot of things. Try to, and I'm just saying this because I haven't thought as deeply as you teaching a kid on this, but try to teach them to be good leaders,
Hmm.
and also try to have them think outside the box. I think that's probably the two major things. And maybe in the pre-teens or so, maybe not work, but maybe try to sell a product. I don't know, maybe sell a jar of candy or something like that. And think of something creative and kind of run with the brain juices
Yeah.
to make those stuff. Yeah.
Totally. I love that you mentioned thinking outside the box because that is definitely gonna come handy. You know, it's like, yeah, I used to feel like resentment for my dad because I was just given $2 a day. Like the fuck, like I didn't even know how I survived with $2 a day. You know, like I was the stingiest mofo out there. Like it was so funny because at school, I remember we would have our treasurer like collect stuff like funds for class funds, and it would be like $1, and that's like half my allowance a day. And I was just like, "What are you gonna do with my dollar?"
That's very good. That's very good. Do you still get the allowance by chance? I'm
Not
curious.
anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
Not anymore. I dropped out of college, and it's definitely been like one of the biggest, biggest best things I've done for myself.
So, but did your parents have that reaction? They're like, "What the fuck did you do?"
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like I remember my mom was incredibly like devastated because, um if you guys immigrated to the US, what she did was as a solo parent that we, our only parent that we were talking to, because my when my mom and my dad separated, we kind of got estranged from my dad.
Mm.
She went to um work abroad so she could earn higher and send money to her three kids. And when she did that, that was like I just experienced everything, like budgeting. Like sometimes I would hear that there's only like $2 left in the ATM. And like that's what I kind of like grew up with.
Mm.
So if it's for you guys it was immigration, for me it was growing up without my mom so she could like um give us a great future, and then I dropped out and that was like super heartbreaking for her. But
Mm.
then I remedied that a year after I dropped out.
Good. I mean, I heard you just made like a whole bunch buku money, dinero and stuff, right? After that, like your business blasted off like crazy. I guess this was during
Yeah,
the pandemic or stuff.
yeah, it was. How about like for you, what was it like growing up with immigrant parents like who went to the US as refugees from the Vietnam War? What do you like remember about your childhood that stands out for you?
They were I guess kind of similar to yours. It's kind of funny how as immigrant parents or not, we grew up and they were being very they save a lot of money. We didn't make that much. We're
Mm,
very poor, and we went through and we grew up pretty poor as well. So we learned how to like save money. So sometimes I wanted like let's say if I have $5, kind of similar to your situation. That's why I was kind of smiling at you. Be like for me, if I have $5 and I would
mm.
cherish that for a month. I would stretch it
Yeah.
out for a month and like maybe spend a little here, spend a little there, and then have a friend that kind of helps me. So yeah, we think creatively, and I think that's another thing when you use the word adversity. I'm also thinking about resilience as well and how you're
Mm,
able to become more creative. And I think that's part of the DNA of an entrepreneur. And I think great entrepreneurs they don't necessarily need a lot of money to do really well, but they can do an okay money in the beginning, especially but you get very creative in doing anything like growing your business and such. So, I mean,
yeah.
I would tell anybody who would start a business, you don't have to think you have to spend a lot of money. Just start with a little bit and then slowly grow from there and go up there.
Mm. From like your upbringing, you mentioned that like were your parents entrepreneurs like yourself, or like were they?
Yeah. No.
They were.
No, they weren't. They
No, they
weren't. They weren't.
weren't. Wow. So
They,
who? Yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I was gonna. I'm listening to you.
Who's the biggest influence that you've had in your life that's influenced you tremendously?
Regarding my entrepreneurial life, is that what you're saying, or are you talking about?
That and in general. So both.
So, a couple of things. I think one main thing for me in my younger life would probably be this guy, and it's for a lot of people too, by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor
Oh
Dad.
yeah.
So when I read that book, I'm like, oh, we don't have to work for money, and you have this other mental thing on this, and it's so funny because I actually met the guy who was his rich dad, by the way, the guy
Wow.
that
So
helped him.
it's legit.
Yeah,
The
well,
rich dad is legit.
yeah, it is a metaphor, and it's actually from this guy. He's a great businessman as well, but he was like, damn it, I was that rich dad that taught him, and
Yeah.
now he's that Robert Kiyosaki is making millions of dollars. So, anyways, I met these geniuses, and I talked to them, and that's how I grew. But how I met the rich dad was through Tony Robbins, and how I became more of a personal growth, and that just got me connected to everybody else.
Wow, that's freaking awesome. So I've always wondered like if Rich Dad was totally like a legitimate person. And
Yeah,
I'm so happy to find out finally.
yeah, most people don't know this. It's so funny because like in different Facebook groups, and I was like, you know what? I This guy's the rich dad because he's telling everybody like he's the one that taught Robert Kiyosaki about this whole rich dad mentality stuff. But now Robert Kiyosaki is off in his own tangent, but this guy's also as rich, but isn't as famous as Robert
Mm,
Kiyosaki. So
yeah.
if anybody wants to know, his name is Keith Cunningham. Very smart guy. He's still alive. He's old, but he's still alive and living in Austin right now.
What's his name? Keith Cunningham?
Keith Cunningham. Yeah, he wrote a book recently. It's
That's
called
awesome.
The Road Less Stupid. It's a great book, kind of dry, but I think all entrepreneurs should read that book. Definitely.
Oh wow. That's awesome that you got to meet these people
Hmm.
and like you didn't stay in the bubble that you guys kind of had. You like literally explored. Let's touch back on you growing up with siblings. How many sisters, brothers did you have?
Yeah, so I had three sisters and a brother. So
Mm.
one older sister, two younger sisters, and a youngest brother. And we grew up with five kids. So imagine that with low income family. And
Wow.
yeah, and our parents push us education all the time. And yeah, I mean, and then you mentioned, I mean, you kind of brought up about to the audience that there was a breaking point in my entrepreneurship when I found out that one of my sisters, she committed suicide, and
Mm.
that just shook my whole life all of a sudden. And then at that time I got angry at my parents. I was like, we spent this whole life trying to build this good facade for you guys, and now look what happened. Your facade is kind of ruined because one of your kids just killed himself.
Mm.
And I told her, I'm like, it's kind of effed up on my end, but I was kind of angry at that time. I was like, it's your fault. You guys push us so much. And it's so funny because in her suicide letter, she keeps saying, she kept apologizing. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, mom." Like she kept apologizing to my mom, and a couple of times in the letter, she said she just wants to be loved. It was
Mm.
very intense. It was a very intense suicide letter because we didn't get to see it till like a couple weeks after her death, because I think the police was like kind of like what do you call it, investigating about it and stuff. And but yeah, after reading it, it was so intense for us. And in my mind, it confirmed that. I'm like, well, in my interpretation, I was like, it's your fault. She's apologizing to you because we never make you happy. And the thing
Mm.
is, I'm telling everybody who become parents, like you just gotta celebrate your joys and be there for your parents. Um, Let me tell you something a little bit more deeper. About a month after her death, my mom went up to her. She says, "If you guys have anything to say, tell us." And I go, "Oh yeah, I have tons of things to say." So then I was from my parents. I was saying all these things I didn't like, and then she just turned around 180 and she was like, "You're just bullshitting." And I'm like, "Look, see, you're still doing this. You didn't learn from this crazy incident." So then from there, I just got really, I guess I got in a way it is called rebellious, but in a way I think I became more like more firm in my stance and my belief, and I just did what I wanted to do and want to have a more freedom life, because I felt like my parents, they live in a cage, in a mental cage all the time. They've always been in prison, and I just want to be free. So I don't want to suffer like what they did. So I want to change that mentality.
Mm. Wow, that, you know, it's kind of like it's weird that you brought that up, but I think not a lot of people talk about this. It's when, Asian families do literally everything they can to maintain that facade that everything is perfect. Like you're perfect, their daughter's perfect, like everything is like in top shape. But then when, for example, there are unfortunate events like suicide, it's kind of like it's weird that you mentioned the facade first. Was it like that? Like, did they have more concern about the facade than the loss of their daughter? Because for some families it's
Mhm.
like that, believe it or not. It's like
Right, right.
they'd rather kill you than you putting them to shame. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Yeah, no, they were very, very first and foremost, they were very devastated about the news, and they were very angry at her too. Like, why did she do this, and why dumb how dumb she is. But I think that was like the first and the utmost thing. And to me, my interpretation is you guys forced us to become so being this mold that you guys want us to be, that we it's so hard for us to always maintain that perfection that you said.
Mm.
And that's why I brought along with the word facade. That's like I said, I was angry, and that's my perception in that moment. Do my siblings think of the same way? Probably not, but that was my
Mm.
interpretation. And I just but right after that, they didn't really care. They're like, oh, you guys do whatever you guys
Mm.
want. So that's sort of a light, a good thing out of this whole
Mm.
incident, but it really devastated me, put me back a lot of
Wow.
years, and it aged me too. And then I gained like 10, 20 pounds. It was a very crazy time for me that time.
Yeah, it's understandable. You lose someone who's really important to you. And I guess it's losing, like it's sad that it had to take losing a sister, losing a daughter for them to kind of like loosen up in their ways a little bit and not push you as hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I and unfortunately, a year and a half later, my mom she passed away of a
Mm,
stroke.
mm,
So it was just my dad throughout the whole time. But right before her death, my mom was always telling my sisters she was most concerned about me because I was doing the entrepreneurship. Everybody else was going to school and trying to get like a corporate job or
mm,
stable job, and I wasn't following that path. I was doing my business, my bartending business. I was in my room talking stuff out. I have all the crazy stuff in my garage, and then I was trying to grow up. They're like, why you work so hard? And I'm like, that's how entrepreneurs do, especially in the beginning. It is a lot of hard work. uh,
mm.
but I'm not gonna say it's still not hard, but it's if you see me plus 10 years ago compared to now, I'm totally a different. The business ran a lot better in a different way up to the next level.
Wow, that's awesome. And I love that you started from literally the bottom. Start from the
Yeah,
bottom, now you're here.
that was my saying. I was like, start from. I was saying that to my friends. It's so funny. They're just like laughing. They're just like, oh, he's just being goofy or silly. But yeah, that was exactly the thing that I've told them.
That's
Definitely.
awesome. What are you like? What pushes you now? Because before, like, all right. So I want you to walk me through what was pushing
Mhm.
you before and what's pushing you now.
Oh man, good question. This is so loaded right here. Growing up again, growing up, we live in San Jose, so it's a
Mm,
Silicon Valley. Back then, San Jose homes, I'm talking about in the 90s. This homes were about 300,000 roughly, and around 2000, it was like 500. And in that time, my mom was like, "Oh my God, homes are $500,000. Oh, OMG, oh my God." And they were always so scared in buying a home. And then right now in 2022, homes are at least $1 million right now in San Jose. And we're talking about homes that are like old, not even that of a good quality, good looking home, and it's plus $1 million right now. So then, so coming from that, growing up with that, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be live in a world of fear. I'm going to live and be fearless. So I'm not going to be scared. So whether I'm able to afford living in the Bay Area or not, I'm still going to jump into real estate, and that's how I have a fire lit in me that I also want to invest in real estate. I believe there are other investment vehicles that is great, which I'm already doing, like stock, mutual funds, ETFs. I'm already doing all that stuff, but I want to have a more of a tangible thing is to have
Mm.
real estate as well and make that as my residual income. So that's my outlook right now. So I have other businesses, but I want money again, money to work for me. So I want to create this whole real estate empire that I wanted to do. And I bet your dad can probably chime in and give you some expertise in this too.
Yeah, my dad is definitely all about real estate. It's so funny because I would say I used to say like I'm into real estate, and then I would like present a really luxurious, like overly ridiculously priced condominium to my dad, and my dad would be like stop bullshitting me. You don't really you don't want this for an investment, you want this for the status. And I'm like, yep, you pretty much got me there. But it's very interesting because I like aside from you, I also talked to like one of my friends and then another girl who's gonna come on the podcast as well. And she was like literally into real estate too. So what they do, I don't know if you have like a similar strategy. And this literally like when I heard about this like the second time, I'm like I told my boyfriend we're gonna do that. I want I want money to just like come no matter what, even though we're not working, even though we're not chasing. And real estate is amazing because first you get to use your property as leverage. And of course there's rental income there, so it's like fucking awesome. So like they were talking about how the bank could literally give you free money, in real estate, and all you have to do is like raise cash upfront,
Mhm.
buy the property, and then use that property as collateral, and you'd like be given 80% of how much that property is worth. And when it appreciates the next year or two or five, you can go through a refinancing so that the bank can give you a higher value, which is even more free money. And like that literally like inspired me, and I told my boyfriend like I wanted to get into real estate as well because yeah, it's tangible, but it's also like literally true passive income.
Yeah, it's good, but I would kind of put my brakes on there because if everybody thought this way, then it's gonna be all well. You just also got to also see the neighborhood and also see
Mm.
the renters as well. So it's a workup, but it's doable. I have a lot of friends in that, and like I said, you're talking about the sexy side of real estate investing and rentals. But there's the other side where you have to be very careful. Like, oh, what are the numbers? What are the property taxes? Is
Mm.
this area good? Will this area do well in 5, 10 years? Like for instance, San
Oh.
Jose, it's going up because Google is going to move in here, so definitely it's going to do well. But like other properties that I see that's more affordable to millennials and Gen Zers right now is probably not the Bay Area, but maybe somewhere for instance in the United States, like in Idaho or in New Mexico, a little bit more affordable places. So that's but you also got to watch out for the neighborhood, and it goes for anywhere in the world as well. Philippines, or I have family in Vietnam, and I'm like, oh, which area did you guys invest in? So but it's great. I think it's something tangible and something great, and you can even pass on that legacy to your kids, and that's a very very powerful thing.
Wow. I didn't even know that. I was just looking at the sexy side, but you definitely like you made me think for a bit there. So what are the things that you kind of like need to look out for when you're looking at a property? Like for example, for you, what are the things that you've learned you needed to like watch out for?
Yeah, right. So I think the number one thing for me is neighborhoods, and where I'm at, neighborhoods are ranked by letters. So A, B, C, D, just like grades, A, B, C, D, E, F, C. So obviously you buy a neighborhood that's an A neighborhood, that's a really good neighborhood. But is that a good long-term rental property? Probably not a good property. Usually people would want investors, they tend to get C or B grade neighborhoods because there's a potential that it can go up,
Mhm.
and it's more of a easier buy-in to grow your business from there. So that's one key aspect right there.
Oh wow. All right. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna take note of that. That's a really good consideration. Yeah, I haven't thought of that.
Yeah, here's another thing I learned from this really guy that he's like so he's like the hot shot in a real estate firm. He said that buy real estate where there are airports because it's easy.
Mm,
So people who travel, right? So it's easy for people to travel. So it's usually business people, so usually well-to-do people. So you want to buy
mm.
properties that's near an airport. So that's another powerful thing right there.
That's awesome. Right now at this stage in your career, where do
Mhm.
you see yourself like in the next 5 to 10 years? Is a family in somewhere in the picture within that timeline?
Definitely, I'm on a hyperdrive right now.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely. Hopefully, family in the future. But the thing is, this is my thing. If I want to do family, then would I want my own home here first? So this is my dilemma right now, and I just let people know. And it's pretty cool if people can comment or say something about
Mm,
this. But I had a dilemma, and I talked to real estate investors, and I talked to real estate agents, and I talked to friends, family, and let me get your input in as well. So whether I should get a primary home first in San Jose, which is extremely expensive, and then do real estate investing, or do real estate investing first and get a primary home. This is with the thought of maybe having a family soon. So
mm.
that's another factor in there. So let me get your answer on this.
Hmm. I think this is like a different perspective because I'm a girl, and I say that not because of any like sexist thoughts, but because it's really different, like guys, you guys think more about like really providing, like giving stability, right? For women, and that's awesome. So if it were like if it for me, what I would do is I would do real estate investing first. Um, hold off on the gratification, delay that, and live off of interest, and then use kind of like the equity and the profit that I make off of real estate investing to build a house of my own that I can call like this is for my family. I think that's what my dad did. So
Mhm.
like I remember when I was 17, I lived with him for a year. Not the best, obviously, because there's no TLC from my mom. But yeah, that's exactly what he did. He invested first. He chose like properties that weren't really like the cutest or the most beautiful, but they had like good tenants. So he got those properties, and later on in his mid 40s, he just bought a home, their second home now, that's not like used for business. Because it's
Mhm.
so funny before, because like we all I think he almost had a house that's like literally close to the slums, and I'm like, why? And he explained it to me. He's like, it's close to a school, it's close to a hospital, it's close to literally everything. And I'm like, oh wow, that's smart. But it's like, as his daughter, just so you can have like perspective too, as his daughter, it wasn't really like the most prestigious thing, because if I'd like bring people over, people would like drop me off. They'd always be like, "Is this his quarters area?" And it would always be like almost embarrassing. But now it's like I see what my dad has done in terms of like how he's delayed his gratification and
Mm.
how's that paid off for him. I think it's really, yeah, at first, like comfort has definitely been sacrificed. I'm not sure you have to live in the slums in the US, probably not. But being able to kind of like have that safety net, knowing that you have like rental income coming in, I think that's helpful too. But definitely, it's like it came with a cost.
Yeah, no, you're so dead on. I feel like you're wise beyond your years because yeah, guys, we have this mentality where we want to provide and provide safety net. So let me kind of ask you kind of a personal question. How long have you been with your guy for?
My boyfriend,
Yes, yes.
we've been together officially for 2 months,
Okay.
and
So
yeah, 2 months. But this is like the healthiest relationship. I've been in. And it's so funny because he he's so sure, which I'm like really impressed by, because he's so sure that he wants to like marry me and all that. But I I'm aware that that's not very typical.
Typical of him or typical of young
Typical of
people?
men, I think.
Yeah,
He's
no,
yeah.
that's interesting, and I kind of like this guy because if he has that thinking, then he's going to turn a very very good loving man. I You're right because guys, when we're ready to get married, we want to get our ducks all lined up in a row, and
Yeah.
most girls they don't give a damn about that. That's what I realized. But yeah, that's how guys they have to do. Get the ducks lined in a row, and
Yeah.
then provide them a space, and then get married. So.
I think for entrepreneurs, this is what I've observed with my like dad and my stepmom. You definitely need somebody who understands that you're not immediately gonna get like the fancy house. You know,
Mhm.
that you still would need to like prioritize the business. Because I think if you're like looking to get married, it's really hard to like justify your decisions to someone who kind of like has an employee mindset, because
Mhm.
and I saw this with, you know, my it's funny because my boyfriend now, like he used to be married, right? And
I what?
yeah.
Okay, that's new. Okay, all right. That explains it. Okay.
Yeah, so he used to be married and he's processing his annulment. We don't have divorce here in the Philippines. So it would always be because, you know, she like the ex-wife wasn't an entrepreneur. So it was always like, why don't we have savings? Why is the business always like, why is the business always a priority? Why is the money not in my bank account? Why is it going to be used for Facebook ads? You know, there's always that
Mhm.
why. You always need to justify when, like, as an entrepreneur, you're supposed to just be cruising and focus on the growth of your business and not have to, you know, feel like you're battling it out with your partner. So I guess for you too, and you know, guys who are listening who are entrepreneurs, you gotta be really if you're not already choosing who's an entrepreneur, you need to make sure that the person you're with understands what your goal is, what the plan is, and what the sacrifices are going to be, because otherwise that's just going to result to like fights and, you know, people being disappointed because their expectations weren't met.
Yeah, you're right, Angela. I mean, this is oh my god. So I listen to your other podcasts, and it's incredible. So I think people are missing out, or people who are just listening in, they're missing out because you give a lot of wisdom and a lot of things. I agree with you. So if you guys listen to your other podcast, it's so dead on. So for this one, I agree again. This is so dead on because man, I think a relationship, especially entrepreneurial relationship, you got to have the same value.
Mm,
And I guess coming into it, you can't because there's some people, their five love languages. One is they got to spend a lot of time together. You got to work your around time with that because entrepreneurs sometimes they work 20 hours, sometimes they
yeah,
work a lot of hours in one day. I'm talking about
yeah,
maybe during a week, maybe 100 hours, 200 hours, and that's part of their life. But it probably won't be a forever life. It's just at that moment in time we have to sacrifice that time for it to become an easier life.
yeah, totally. There's a lot of sacrifices, and it's not like it's definitely gonna be tumultuous. So I know one of my friends, like his girlfriend used to be like an employee, so she had like a really employee like her mindset was that of an employee, and
Mhm.
she just did not understand, you know, why money wasn't staying in their savings and it was always going to the business. So
Mhm.
they definitely worked around that. It's so funny because he would bring her to like Peng Joon's events just so she would understand why. And now, like after, you know, 7 years of being together, they finally worked it out. So it's not, I'm not saying that, if your partner has like a mindset employee, because you could be married to somebody who's like freaking amazing, right? She just has a mindset
Right.
employee and she needs to work through that. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's definitely something that you need to work through, work with the other person.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's actually pretty hard at the same
Mm,
time, and I can totally see that. And the other thing you said is and it you're saying, especially in the game business, people they take money and then you reinvest in that
mm,
business. But I gotta tell people to kind of be careful, putting on the brakes on that. And I just want to tell
mm,
people that when you have a business, you're running two businesses. And what I mean by that is obviously you're running your own business, which is the main business. And that's why I kind of want to get in real estate, is because you want to have the second business is your investment.
yeah,
So 401k, stocks, bonds, whatever, how you feel you want to be more of a type of investor, whether a safe investor or more of a risky investor. You should have that as your side. It doesn't have to be your main thing you think about, but I tell every business person, just put away, I don't know, maybe $100 a month to
yeah,
a investment stuff, and you'll see it grow. So I think
mm,
that's highly important. Even though you're reinvesting, just kind of put aside of that a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Because then you'd have money that like works for you instead of,
works for you. Yeah.
yeah, totally. So what is your perspective on your question? Like, what do you think the game plan for you is?
Like you mean going back to the 5 to 10 year plan? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, is it gonna be like get your own a house first and then invest in real estate, or invest in real estate and then get your own house?
You
Obviously,
know what?
nothing is set in stone.
Yeah, you know what? Right now, it's kind of up in the air, and I thank you for
Hmm. Cool. What just happened there?
I don't know. I think there's a lag. Hello?
Hey, I'm here.
Okay. I think there's a little lag.
The electricity went out for a bit.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But we're good now. Yeah, you were saying.
I forgot what I was saying.
No, we were talking about your perspective on your question, basically. So what is
Oh,
the game plan for you? Yeah.
yeah. So it's up in the air right now, and I like your answer. Whether you should do not going with the instant gratification first, but
Mm,
like focus on doing the investing. I kind of want to go kind of halfway, some sort. Um, yeah, I'm still, the answer is not coming up to me yet. So I'm glad I asked
mm.
you that, because you're like the additional person that I can like consider when I'm making my decision on this. And I'm probably make my decision by 2022 whether I should invest in my own property, like primary home that I'm living in, or investing. So you'll probably hear
Wow.
from me. I'll let you know where I'm gonna
Oh
do.
yeah, totally. I love to hear it. I think it
Yeah.
depends on what your priorities are too. Cause for me, I'm not looking to get married anytime soon. You'll probably know within the next 15 years. But yeah, I definitely wanna travel more. So it doesn't make sense for me
Mm,
to like, get a home. Whereas for you, you might be in that stage of your life where you're looking to settle down and have kids and all that good stuff right there. That's also kind of
yeah.
scary.
No, thank you for saying this, because I think I said in the beginning, I said that I want to live a life of freedom,
Mm,
and you're right. I mean, if I get primary first, then obviously you have the less of a freedom of where I'm
yeah,
going to go at. So that's a very very good point. Yeah,
totally.
we'll see where I'm going to go.
Awesome. All right. So last question for you, Dave.
Okay,
Dave breaks the mold by
rebelling. No, by just doing what you feel inside, and
Mm,
stand up for yourself. I think that's how I should break the mold.
I love it. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Pussy Power. Dave, could you, before I let you go, could you tell everyone where they can find you if they wanna get you for their events? Where could they go?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on bayareabartenders.com. I also teach too mixology, virtual mixology. So you guys can go to BAB mixology.com. You guys can get some classes and you get from me. So I teach classes online, I teach class in person, and I've taught people from all over the world. I'm talking about people who are Michelin star chefs to people who are just lawyers. Yeah. And after class, after they graduate, they still hang out with me and I still go out and drink out with them. So it's a very fun thing.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Dave. I'm definitely gonna touch back with you, see what your game plan is for the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, Angela.
Awesome. I'll see you, Dave.